Welcome back, everyone. A big thank you to all of our vendors for providing those nice raffle prizes. After this presentation, we'll have one more raffle drawing with a few different plants. But the following presentation is on the Non-Functional Turf and Sustainable Landscaping Practice Program, sponsored by Southern California Gas Company and the California Water Efficiency Partnership. Our speaker, Carlos Bustos, is a Senior Water Resources Project Manager at Maddaus Water Management, specializing in water conservation, demand management, water loss reduction, and climate resilience. With 18 years of experience in water resources management, Carlos has led key initiatives, including the development of conservation plans, water loss audits, and non-functional turf strategies. Please welcome Carlos.
Thank you very much. Does it work? Can you hear me? Can you hear me fine? Okay, perfect. Hey, thank you very much, Lorraine. Thank you, California Water Efficiency Partnership, SoCal Gas, for sponsoring this event. Thank you, Coachella Valley Water District, for organizing this event. And more importantly, thank you all of you for attending this event. Thank you for caring for water, caring for your community. Yeah, should I maybe, can the volume go up, maybe? Oh, okay, cool. Yep. Does it work better now? Okay, perfect. Should I start again? You're here the part where I thank you all, thank all of you. Okay, that's the most important piece, okay? Thank you very much for caring for water. Your community is beautiful. I don't live in California, I live in New Mexico. I love what I've seen already. I love the work that you all have been doing already in caring for landscapes, caring for your environment, and caring for your place, and ultimately that's a reflection of your well-being and how you're connected to your community. So what I'm hoping to do today is to talk about the Assembly Bill 1572, which I'm sure you're familiar. And if you weren't familiar before today, after this meeting, you're going to be an expert. And that's really important, because what we're hoping is that you can take this information back to your own communities and work with your board members, work with your neighbors, either the ones that are permanent residents or transit residents, and really talk to them about the bill, but do it in a way that's meaningful, is actionable, and ultimately is implementable. And what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be helping you process that Assembly bill, talking about how it directly affects HOAs and why it's important for you to understand it, and more importantly, touch on some of the concepts that Mark touched on about developing a long-term plan that's sustainable, not only in terms of greenery and eco-friendliness and climate change resiliency, but also budgetary-wise, which is typically the main pressure and constraints in which we have to deal as HOA members, HOA presidents in charge of landscape, and so forth. So I'll jump into my slides. And this is the agenda for today. So I'll touch on why the regulation exists. So brief background, you heard a lot from Adam, you heard a lot from Scott. I'll sort of bring the big picture, and not only of California, but also the whole 7 basin states and how we're all part of this. A regulation overview, specifically touching on some of the definitions that may affect you or you need to understand in order to properly implement the bill. Some tools for identifying non-functional turf grass, but also for identifying functional areas. Then I'll jump into best management practices. I've assembled BMPs from my background as a qualified water efficient landscaper, teaching that class, also from working with a lot of homeowners associations in Albuquerque and also in Phoenix, and also from gathering information from the whole 7 basin states about how they're going upon implementing and transforming some of these areas. And then I'll touch on something that's really important that I've helped navigate other HOAs is how to address concerns. What are some of the common questions that you're going to get when you're thinking about your landscape, when you're thinking about transforming turf grass and that concept of like property value and so forth. So I'm hoping that all this information is going to help you become an expert. Before we get going, I'd like you to pull out your phone. If you got it at hand, this is the only chance you can pull out your phone. Make sure it's turned off, by the way. Well, not turned off, but the volume. And you can, for those that are can know how to use their QR code, you can use this QR code, and it should pop up this question. And I want you to answer with one word. What comes to mind when you hear about non-functional turf? As you're answering, your answer is going to pop up in the screen, and the ones that are most common or are shared by others is going to be bigger than the others. So we'll take 2 minutes. I don't know, grass, ornamental, confusing, not needed. Unnecessary, non-existent. It's perfect. Grass in general, decorative, lawns. Okay, it's a good exercise to get us thinking about this process. And I'm glad it's working. I was a little nervous about that, so I'm glad it's working. Okay, so everybody had a time to that wanted to answer. Okay, so as we can see, oh, it's still coming together. Okay, so as we can see, one of the main themes that is coming up is not needed, and that's perfect because as we start talking about the bill, that's the main intent of this bill, is to identify grass that is not needed. And what that means can be really different from you and your neighbor. That can be really different from one HOA to the other HOA. That can be really different from one city to the other city. So it's really important that that's why it's really important that your key takeaway, your homework, sorry, I'm giving you homework. Your homework is to take this information and share it back with your community members and talk with them so they can help you define what's not needed. Thank you. So I'll talk about what are the requirements for HOAs and a brief regulation overview. That I mentioned your community is beautiful? I did? Yeah. So as I mentioned, Bill 1572 has a goal, and it also has different intentions. I'll start with the intention. It's use what you need. That's the overarching intent of this bill. And that has been really the force behind my professional career as a conservation professional, for Adam as well. It's trying to identify how much water can we use to accomplish a purpose and reduce that water and still accomplish that purpose. So that's the same with toilets. There used to be 7.5 gallons per flush toilets. Then it went to 5 gallons per flush toilets. Then now it's like 1.28. Now there's no water toilets. But we're not using those. That's good. But my point is that we have gone from a toilet that used to use a lot of water to a toilet that's still accomplishing the same with less water. So that's our goal here. That's our intent. The overarching goal is to going back to what brought us here. The last 25 years, yes, we live in deserts, we live in high desert environments, we live in low desert environments, and we have been experiencing droughts for the last 100 years. As a matter of fact, for even longer. But in the last 25 years specifically, our snowpack in the Colorado Basin has dropped by 30%. Our precipitation is fluctuating, where there's some summers that we don't even get monsoon seasons, we don't get rain in the spring. We've also, because of that, we've seen that, temperature has risen, especially in 2021, when we had those heat swells around the whole world that we've never experienced before. And along the way, demand has certainly, demand for needs and population has growth. So our Colorado Basin river has been, the flow of the river has been reduced by 30% in some areas. So in 2021, Lake Powell, Lake Mead, which are reservoirs that store water for 32 million people in 7 basin states. 32 million people, all of us, a lot of us here, all the way from Albuquerque to LA. So 32 million people depend on the Colorado Basin, not only for water, but also for energy. So when we got into the situation where Lake Mead, Lake Powell had dropped to the lowest level, it was an emergency. We can't live without water. There's no way we can function as societies without water. So it was the first time that the federal government really came into play and said, well, there's an emergency. There's a shortage situation. And the conundrum where we were is that already we have built-in conservation programs that have been around for 25 years. In those 7 state basins, we have reduced demand by 45% in the last 25 years, thanks in part to all the work that you have done already conserving water. Wild population has increased by 60% in all this area. So we've been doing our work, but we're being asked to do more. And that's the big challenge we have. And that's why we're here, is to help us process that. It's like we have done a lot. And I hear this all the time. It's like, I'm already conserving. What else can I do? So that's the challenge. Nevada, the state of Nevada was the first one to jump in and develop a bill to ban non-functional turf grass. California executed under the drought condition an executive order to ban the use of potable water and non-functional turf grass. Eventually it turned into this bill. But the intent of that bill is to further reduce demand, to get us to the point where we're using what we need. It's not talking about like taking out all your turf grass. It's talking about like identifying what is non-functional, what is non-essential in each of our own communities, in each of our government facilities, and each of our entities, and get to the point where we got what we really are using and needing, with the goal of building more resiliency in our communities. That's the overarching goal. We want to support economic growth. We want to support resilient communities. We want to have healthy communities. We want our kids, our grandkids, etc., to continue enjoying Palm Spring area, and we want these communities to be here in perpetuity. In order to do that, we got to continue conserving water. So that's a big message, and we all know that. I'm not preaching to the choir. That's how you say it, yeah. Because we're all here for that. Okay. What I'm hoping is that I can help you just build with your words and your intention and your actions in your own communities that same intent. So this bill it has different implementation schedules, and I'm going to focus on the one on January 1st, 2029. The bill identifies over 12 different properties that are considered to be within the areas of commercial, industrial, and institutional. So within the commercial, there's office parks, there's shopping malls, there's office buildings, there's restaurants. Within the institutions, there's churches, there's agencies, government agencies, which are affected by this bill. But then it also has this specific one that talks about large users. And that's where HOAs come in. Why? Because we manage a lot of, I don't manage HOAs, but I'm just going to say we, just to bring it all together. We manage large areas of landscapes. I heard this during lunch, I was talking to one of our HOA members that manages 29 acres landscapes. That's a lot of acreage. So that's considered to be large. If you take that to your house, and this is why it doesn't apply to single family residential, you're managing in your house maybe 1,000 square feet, 500 square feet. But a large acre, managing 29 acres, I think here in Coachella there's like 400 HOAs. That probably translates to hundreds of thousands of square feet of mixed landscapes that includes not only turf grass, but also trees. Those trees are super important, especially during summer here. Somebody told me it got to like 120 degrees here. Woo, you need a tree to get under that tree. If you're walking around, if you're working outside, you need a break. That tree is gonna help you provide shade. It's also gonna help you increase or reduce the urban heat effect that's caused by those heat spells. So really we're talking, when we're thinking about this, let's not necessarily focus on non-functional turf grass, even though that's the bill. Let's think about your entire landscape and the responsibility that you have as HOA members in managing those landscapes and how that translates to your overall community. So as I was flying in here and I was looking at Palm Springs, it was so beautiful. Looking at the valley, it looks so amazing. And the mix, yes, you got a lot of green areas, but that green area that stuck out was not necessarily the turf grass, at least for me. It was the abundance of trees. It was the palo verde. It was all the palms, of course. It was all these different trees that exist in your region that are really the main assets of any landscape. That's the most important asset, a tree. It takes longer to grow. It requires precise type and amount of water over a given period. And if you're not taking care of those trees, then that's where you start getting into like issues with replacement and so forth. But I'll jump into that. The important thing about here is that by January 1st, 2029, a homeowners association need to comply with this bill. What that means is that we got to start today and develop an action plan. And I'm going to be providing some tips on how to go upon that. So as I mentioned, the whole non-functional turf grass movement is not tied in only to California. It's connected to 32 million water users, over 53 main water providers that provide water all the way from Denver to Albuquerque to LA, Las Vegas, all these different places that we probably visited. We're connected. This cost today in this valley is connected to the improvement of an entire basin that supplies water to 32 million people. So what you're doing in your own community is helping us in Albuquerque. That's how important this is, and that's why we need to be involved. So of course, some of the practical experience definitions, topics that I'm going to touch on is bringing the experience of what I've learned and working with different water providers from all the 7 basin states and trying to connect that to help you try to define in your own space what is non-functional turf grass and what are some of the tools to help you there. States are going upon it differently. As far as I know, Nevada has a bill. California has a bill. Colorado created their first state program to support via funding. In New Mexico, they're talking about creating a bill for future development and so forth. So there's very different practical ways that this can be approached, and ultimately help you define what's functional and non-functional. And what is the difference? That's the biggest question we get. What is the difference of functional? It looks the same. So it's the same type of grass, but what is it? The functional area? Is the area functional? So I like to think about it that way. Not necessarily focusing on the turf grass, but focusing on the area. What can you do in a narrow strip of turf grass? Anybody? Let's think about a narrow strip between a road and a sidewalk. And there's this narrow strip.
If you walk, that's it.
Walk on it. And you can walk on it, okay? What's that? A dog run, yeah? Dogs that can stay focused and stay along the line of the, yeah? My dog cannot do that, but yes. But yeah, the point is that. And on the other hand, if you got 1,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet, then you can play around. Your dog will enjoy it more, probably. You can roam around. You can play frisbee. You can sit back. You can relax, and so forth. And it actually it's more practical. But ultimately, I'm going to be talking about some definitions. I'm not going to read through all of them. But these are all state-defined thresholds because the bill does give us some definitions. It does not give us all of them. It does not exactly tell us what is non-functional turf grass. It does tell us what is functional turf grass. And it does provide a definition for non-functional turf grass, but ultimately it's going to be up to HOAs to self-certify. And that self-certification is going to be in the form of to be redundant, a form that's going to be developed by the Water Resource Control Board. And HOA boards are going to have to submit this form back to the state, letting them know I got X amount of non-functional turf grass, and this is my intention to transform it. It's not, the state is not necessarily going to tell you how much functional and non-functional turf grass you have in your own space. What the state is telling us is that we need to comply. So these are some definitions that would help us just kind of like CII water users. I already mentioned that large landscape users, that's where HOAs fall. Common areas, it means the areas that you all manage. So everything that's not considered part of a single family residential within your neighborhoods, that's considered to be common. It's typically managed by maintenance staff or landscape company that you may hire to do this. And as Adam mentioned, you got multiple meters that irrigate these areas. They have water budgets that you have to manage. So these common areas are a lot more complex, but again, they're the most important ones because they represent the identity of your community. And I'm going to touch back to identity of the community later on. Potable water means the water that you can drink. Who drinks the tap water here? It's good. It's good. Sometimes I get water. The tap water is expensive, but then we buy 1 liter water for $5. We get how many? 748 gallons per maybe $5. That's a lot more. How much? For less than that. There you go. So a buck, you get 748 gallons. Yeah. So whenever somebody complains about the price of tap water, come on, really? Let's look at your bill and see how much gallons you get. What, 6,000 gallons is the base for indoor around? Yeah, 8 CCF. Okay. So yes. So main thing, potable water is good to know because you're gonna be using that information to identify what meters you have within your HOA that are being fed by potable water and which ones are being fed by non-potable water. This is useful because the bill actually gives you a waiver, if you will. If you're using non-potable, then you can continue watering that area of turf grass that could potentially be considered non-functional. Now, I'm not saying you should keep it non-functional, because if it's still non-functional, you should still consider transforming it from spray to drip. And you'll learn why as we continue. So these are state-defined definitions. Recreational means anything that's sport fields. Who plays golf here? I would expect more. There's so many, what, 120 golf courses? That's what, that in the area? Only 5 of you play? Come on. Where do you all play? Picket ball? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Perfect. So functional turf means an area of turf that's basically serves a recreational purpose or is considered to be used for pet relief, a pet relief area, and it should be designated as pet relief area. It's also any area that for gathering. So if you use it twice a year to meet with your community there, or that's where you have your birthday once a year, that's considered to be a gathering space. But it must be, the main thing, can it be used? Can you gather people? Well, yeah, I can gather with my friend in this little narrow area of turf here. We can talk all day there, you know. But when you're watering it, what's happening with that water? Can you properly water it? Can you efficiently water it without wasting water? So this is how all these things start coming into play. It's not necessarily the turf grass. It's not necessarily whether or not you can use or not the area. It's basically how you can use that area and how it's being watered and whether or not that water is being wasteful. And then it provides a definition for non-functional, which starts giving us a path to what is non-functional. And this can be sort of like your focus area, any street right-of-ways or parking lots. So back in the 90s, all parking lots require you to have turf grass all around. And who's seen like that turf grass and typically the trees? They look awful. It's super hard to maintain trees, healthy living trees, when you only get them one little 4 square feet for their root growth. It's impossible. But yet, older landscaping development regulation require developers to put a tree there. Even because for each 10 parking space, you need to have 1 tree. But the parking space will be huge because, you know, we got big cars. And then, but the tree is just right there. And you're watering that tree for 25 years and it's still the same size. And you're giving it water. You're doing everything, those 25 years of water, wasted. Wasted. Because that tree is supposed to last 80 years and never got to its right size. So that's what I'm talking about. Those are things that we need to think about, whether or not when we're thinking about turf grass, when we're thinking about trees as well. So as I mentioned this, the State Water Resource Control Board, I actually call them as part of my research for developing this training, and they still don't have the form developed. As soon as that form is developed, I'm sure Adam and his team and Cal Webb are going to be providing resources, alerting the different parties and stakeholders and folks from the state to like make them aware that this certification is live, is ready, and you can start self-certifying your areas. But you're going to be ahead of the game. Because by next year, you're already going to have the tools and you're going to have already identified what is functional and what is non-functional turf grass, especially after this presentation and after all the other presentations that you heard about today. So just in summary for this section, so how much turf removal is enough? According to the bill, it doesn't specify. Does it specify? Maybe wrong. It doesn't necessarily say. It doesn't say California must remove 1 million square feet of non-functional turf grass. It doesn't. But let's go back to the goal. Colorado Basin, dire conditions, we depend on it, we rely on it, 32 million people, 7 states, many communities. So that's our goal. Our intent is to support that by helping ourselves really be more resilient by identifying non-functional turf grass. So the most we transform, the more we can potentially save in water. Now, it's not guaranteed. Mark, We can't guarantee we're going to save water, but we can aim for it. Or we can save water, but not necessarily money, maybe. That's the learning lesson, okay? But we can save water, okay? And that makes us more resilient because our storage basins are going to be more healthier, our river is going to be healthier, and so forth. How to make something a functional area? Can you put a bench in that little 4 square feet of turf that me and my friend are talking? So now we can sit and continue talking. That's questionable, but should it be done? So those are the kind of things. But we need to come back to the definition in order when we're thinking this through. Because I'm sure some of us are going to be like, oh, wait, I'm going to make this area functional. Now it's functional. I'm going to put a bench. Now it's functional. But does it serve that purpose for sports, for gathering, full recreational spectrum, for pet relief? And some saving tips that Mark touched on is we need to start now, before January 1st, 2029. We need to start now. We need to plan ahead so we can implement and start implementing our projects on a phased approach, because it requires funding, but also your state agencies, your water providers, such as Coachella Valley Water District, they have limited funding on a yearly basis. If all the HOAs decide to do 50,000 square feet, which is, I'm just going to put that number as a low, hopefully more, but let's say 50,000 square feet, and one day, can the district manage that budget? Can they properly rebate and incentivize you in having that funding? If you start planning out now, you can jump on it ahead of the game before everybody. A month before, like we're humans. So I got 1 month, I need to comply. And everybody's going to jump in. We need to phase out our approach, start thinking now so we can connect to those funding sources and also the resources that are being provided by the district. So I'm going to jump into my next section, and this is where we start looking at practicality. And these are some tools that I'm going to be providing that are, some of them are, I think all of them that I'm going to touch on are free in one way or the other. But these are practical tools that you can use on the ground to identify what are the non-functional turf areas in your HOA. The first one that I'm going to touch on is getting a landscape design. Who has a landscape design of your HOA in common areas? Like a landscape design, just the whole layout of all your landscape areas. 2. That's the same question, like maps, just like a general map of your whole landscape areas. Here's one. All right. Here's one. All right. Perfect. What about like an irrigation as-built? What I just said, irrigation as-built, like who has that? Like, it's so hard. Sir, you have one?
We have one for conversion that we've done.
Okay.
We've not done in the past. We wish we did, but it was done 60 years ago.
That's my point. Most of our landscapes have been done 60 years ago. And throughout time, who has been a board member for 60 years here? That's a lot. I mean, some of you may be 2 years old when you started as a board member. It's hard. Those transitions happen. You're constantly changing from one board member to the other. Along the way, that board likes this landscape companies. They like, what's your name? Ivan. They like Ivan. And next board member comes in, they like, what's the other company that was around here? Another landscape company here? Yeah. My point is that sometimes board members switch out landscape companies. Maybe the design of the landscape was done by one company, but then the install was done by one company, and then the maintenance is done by another company. And they never shared that landscape plan. They never shared that irrigation as-built. So my point is, next time you're working with a designer, get a landscape plan. Work on that. Even if it's, I love your paper, sir. Even if it's a one paper, even if you do it yourself, just go out there. The next point is irrigation as-built. You can identify your different zones for those areas. Identify whether the zones are spray, drip, and how those zones connect to the meters of the Coachella Valley Water District. And then you can look at, oh, this meter non-portable or portable. So you can, just by doing this, just having these tools, you can start identifying your areas. Second tool, this inventory checklist that I developed. This is, as you can see, hopefully you can. If you need glasses, let me know. There's a pair here, but hopefully you can see it. But what I did is that I put in a set of criterias, and that's the way I see when you're looking at landscape areas. What are the different elements that can translate to help us define what are functional areas, what are non-functional areas, and those can be used as criteria that you can then create this checklist. This is an assembly of all the different definitions that I've seen come in from Nevada, from Colorado, from New Mexico, from California, different districts, different water providers, in different ways, shape, or forms. Some of them have reached out to stakeholders. Some have a whole and host meetings to gather stakeholders to define non-functional and functional turf grass areas. But ultimately, this checklist is going to be available, and this is a tool that you can use to conduct your own very own assessment. And I'll put an example. So, functional. A designated pet relief area that's clearly marked and actively used within your clubhouse. Do we all agree that's functional? Who has pets? I got pets. Okay, I'll put in another example. Non-functional. I'll look at turf area that's not accessible by pathways or restricted by physical barriers, such as your turf grass below your dumpsters. Is that non-functional or functional? Two extremes. But it's helpful. It's helpful. So this is a checklist that is going to be included. We're going to be sharing the slides with all of you, so you can use the checklist to help you start thinking about what's functional and non-functional.
So we're going to be emailed?
Yes, you'll get it. Yes. They'll be on the website. In the Coachella Valley Water District website? Sorry to put you on the spot. Yes. Okay, yes. Okay.
Everything from today
will be there. Yes. Now, using this checklist, you can do an event, invite your neighbors, or you can, if you're part of the landscape committee or your board members, you can do an on-the-ground assessment. You can invite your landscape professional that day to do a walkthrough, and you can physically walk your 29 acres. But you're running your hiking shoes or walking shoes. Make sure you stretch, drink a lot of water. Don't do it in the summer because it's hot. But you can physically walk your grounds and start identifying the areas that are functional and non-functional. You can use this list as a guideline, and you can physically start walking around and saying, okay, this area with the benches, I would say is functional. I'm not going to go into right or left. I already saw somebody get in trouble. But the one in the top corner, besides the one with pet ways sign, that's considered to be functional. That's sort of like a playground / recreational area. Then you got your playground. But then you start going into those 4 pictures on the corner. It's a narrow strip outside your neighborhood that's basically has a barrier surrounding your neighborhood. It looks beautiful. Whoever's taking care of that is doing a really good job caring for that grass, but is it functional? Can it be used? And it's also sloped. So it's hard to water. You can water it. You can use different cycles, short cycles, to make sure that water doesn't overflow, but it's hard to water. Then you got this other areas, looks like Wet and Wild. Like, I don't know what's happening with that spray head, but it'll be fun when it's 120 degrees. But I don't think it's for that purpose. Inefficient watering. I'm not saying that area is non-functional, but when you're doing your inventory, if you see an area like that, think about, can you improve it? Can you invest on it? Can you make those spray bodies hit the plant material? So you go back to the real intent of that design, which is to only lose about 30% or only be inefficient 30%. We touched on the waterway, how it's created, where they assume that it's 70% efficient. That's probably like 30% efficient. So as you're walking your inventory, then you're gonna, that narrow strip that I was talking about, super hard to keep up. When it's 120 degrees, that turf grass needs like 7 times the amount of water, surrounded by 2 hot areas. It's compacted, especially if it's been 40 years. How many of you have areas like that? It's just hard to grow turf sometimes in some areas. Huh? What's that? Acres that look like that. It's just hard. Well, turf grass is not native to the environment, and then you're putting it in places that it's just really hard to grow it. It's just really hard. Yes, maybe the requirement of a typical blend of grass is 55 inches per square feet. I'm just putting that number out there. But in reality, in order for it to make it green during the highest peak in the summer months, it's 100 inches per square feet. So that's why the bill is targeting turf grass. So not all turf grass, but then you got this areas around parking lot too. Maybe it's used, maybe not. The point is that you can do on-the-ground assessment, start visually identifying this area, and then using those previous tools like the checklist, your landscape map, and start plugging those into your landscape drawings and your irrigation as-builts, and start identifying. And there's some applications that you can download. Some of them, they got the free version, and then they got the one you pay, but you can use an app in your phone to take a picture of those areas, and then you can bring that back to your community and say, what do you think? Do you think this is functional? Are you using it? Is this non-functional? Sorry, Louis. You got it. Fast. Yeah, all right. Google Earth. They have a tool there that you can measure a lawn area. You can measure the area of lawn that you visually inspected. Now you know where it is. You can go back to your house, drink your wine, your coffee, whatever you like, and look at Google Earth, and you can measure the lawn areas that you just recently identified, and then you can add that to your checklist inventory and say, I got 25,000 square feet of non-functional turf grass, and I got 75,000 square feet of functional turf grass. Now you got measurements, and then you can work with Adam and calculate potentially what is the reductions in water demand. This golf course, not to target the 120 golf courses that are in the valley, but there's only 4 in Albuquerque. But this one is a private golf course. They transform 1.8 million square feet of non-playable areas of turf grass to desert-friendly landscapes. They did it in-house at a cost of less than $1 per square foot. And they used Google Earth to identify what were the non-playable areas. And if you ever get a chance, for those 6 people that said that are golf courses, that play golf, to visit Albuquerque, it's called Desert Greens. And it's amazing, it's beautiful. Now it's transformed the whole golf course. It's a whole different experience. I'm making a pitch for golf courses here too. Yeah, I can help you. And I messed this up. The golf course, I got in trouble. Remind me, updates tomorrow or pick a time? Remind me tomorrow?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Okay. You're gonna get, I don't know. Some people like to pick a time. Okay. Oh, now I'm stuck. Okay, I'll use this.
Is it frozen?
Wait, I thought this was sponsored by Cal Webb, not the Golf Course Association. Got in trouble. Okay, is that working?
Oh, yeah, now it's good.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you. All right, next tool. Connect to a student in University of California. They might be looking for projects. They are like it's a complicated word. I'll aim for it. Geographical Information System, it's GIS. That's sort of like the first, but it's a complicated word, but basically what they do, they got a whole department of students that are learning to do this. They can use aerial pictures. They can use specialized databases, specialized programs to like measure and evaluate what types of landscapes you got in your community. They can do this looking from their office. Students are hungry sometimes for projects. If you bring them, I got to comply with this policy. Can you help me map my area and classify it using that checklist into turf grass with trees, native areas, desert-friendly landscapes, buildings, roads. You can use their skills. So touch base with University of Cali GIS department. They may have a department, they may be hungry for a project. And it's free labor, why not? Students are hungry for that. Once you got that database, then you can connect that information with your water usage. And then you can start focusing on the areas that you already identified on the ground. You can connect that to the meters because you already did that homework. If not, Adam and his team can help you. And then you can connect and prioritize the highest water use areas, which are typically your most non-efficient areas to water. For some reason, it just connects. Or it might be also an area that has the highest amount of plant material. There's also that case as well. But that's why you do your on-site assessment. That's why you use these different tools to help you kind of like put it all together. There's a bunch of resources, and that's my main point with this slide here. Is purposely meant to overwhelm you with resources. There's so many resources out there that professionals in my field have put together throughout the years. Many of the resources have been shared here already. Mark, and I forget the other gentleman's name from the Coachella Association of Homeowners, Bruce, the Landscape Contractors of California, Cal Webb, SoCal Gas, Coachella Valley. There's a lot of resources in regards to like, not only on functional turf grass, not only on non-functional turf grass, but also desert-friendly landscapes, tips for improving irrigation efficiency, and so forth. I ran out of space, really. I had like 20 more resources to add, but I ran out of space. You're gonna get this information. Part of your homework is to go back and look at these resources because you're gonna learn a lot and it's gonna help you. Okay, so just to get continue getting our uses going. Let's do a couple of jumping jacks. No, we're not. Let's if you can help me just by logging in again. If you got your browser open, sometimes what it does is that it just opens it up, and this poll will open. What features would you love to see replaced on used turf with? Let's think about that. You can put in more than one word. And we'll do 2 minutes. How am I doing on time? Right now I'm on an hour? Whoa, okay. That's what happens. Yeah, I think. I'm at 55 minutes now. How long do you think? 15 more minutes? 15? Okay. Give me a time check. Thank you. Okay, beautiful. So I can see here walking path, trees, drought tolerant landscapes. So much knowledge here. Picnic area. Trees is the biggest one. So the way this works is a word cloud. If 10 of you selected trees, that's going to be bigger. And then the one that was only one idea is the smallest one. So trees is a big one, lush and efficient. This is great. And this is going to help us go into the next section. And I'm going to be talking about best management practices. This medium right here is in Palm Springs. It used to be turf area. They transform it using a range of palette, diverse type of hardscapes, rocks, and so forth, and plant material. When you're thinking about plant material, not only look at flowers, but also look at different types of plant and their structure and their composition and whether or not they're evergreens or perennial. So all this just kind of like creates a different dynamic in your landscape. And when you're thinking about dynamics in landscape, it also connects to like what type of pollinators and species are going to be attracted to that landscape. So I'm going to touch on and emphasize what Mark touched on, which is creating a long-term plan for your landscape. It's not about just identifying that 4 square feet of turf when I'm hanging out with my friend. It's about how do you envision the common areas in your community? Where is it now? And 20 years from now, where do you want it to be? What's the value that adding trees has for our community? What's the value of adding maybe more common areas? How much is it going to cost? How can I tap into like agencies' rebates and incentives? How can I involve my community? What kind of community engagements, activities should I do? Should I do barbecues? Should I host polls, surveys, events? How can I engage my community to help us develop this long-term plan? Like these changes that we're talking about are going to continue. As conservation professionals, as I mentioned, we've already worked in our communities to reduce water volume by 50%, while our population has increased about the same in the last 20, 25 years. And we're still here today. We're going to be here 20, 25 years from now. So let's think about how we want to envision. Do we want to connect it to our surrounding natural landscape? Maybe that's your vision for your community. Kind of like steps to accomplish that vision. Encourage your residents to participate. I know it's hard to get volunteers, especially for board duties and so forth. But maybe if you create an urgency within your community that you must comply to this bill with this bill, and you use that as a hook, you may draw people. Maybe you have to host free barbecues. Maybe you have to I don't know, bring a country band. I don't know. Maybe you have to do a type of event. You know your community, you understand that you're gonna see what's gonna draw them together. Sometimes you gotta go to where people are already participating, and you understand your community, but the main thing here is encourage that participation. Identify where you can use non-potable as a first step. Replace non-functional turf grass that you've identified. Keep an inventory of what you're doing. So if you got your landscape plan, then you can keep an inventory because the state is going to ask that, most likely. Implement smart irrigation systems like weather control, efficient nozzle, efficient spray bodies in the common areas. Why not? Aim more. Transform, and then your common areas, make them more efficient. Prioritize a climate-ready tree canopy, so choose plants that are regionally adapted to this region, and then work with your agencies. Best management practice 3, use your maintenance staff. Do events for planting, for removing turf. These are sort of like the easy things. Then work with your landscape professionals. Purchase in bulk. You can get a lot more plants that are small. They're small. They may take more time to grow, but you can purchase a lot more in bulk at a cheaper price instead of buying like 1 gallon plants. So 1 quart plant is cheaper, but it takes longer to get established. It requires more care, but it's cheaper. So evaluate those 2 things. Use very low water use plants that can be established after 3, 4, 5 years. Use rebates and incentives, and phase out your projects. This is really close to my heart. It's protecting trees. As you're doing this conversions, trees require a different way of watering. If they're used to being surrounded by grass, typically grass is watered 3 to 5 days a week, shallowly. So typically we tend to think of roots being like 7 feet. They're typically in the 1 foot to 3 foot because they're used to that shallow watering. So as you're doing that transition, think about how you're gonna water those trees. And that's why the bill waives transforming turf grass underneath tree canopy, because they're trying to care for trees.
Is there, it's an unfair question in some ways, but is there a rule of thumb if you have grass around a tree, how far out it can spread, how many spread?
That's a great question.
20 feet out?
That's a great question. So, and there, if there's any local lands, and there is, correct me if I'm wrong, but a rule of thumb is look at the tree canopy. So if I'm the tree, and this is my roots typically extend within that canopy. So that whole area where the tree is, that's typically where your roots are. So that whole area is what you're thinking about protecting.
But the tree's going to grow, and the canopy's going to grow.
Yes.
5, 7 years from now, the canopy will be 3, 4 times whatever.
Yep.
You know.
And that's the second part of it. So trying to understand the extent of how big that tree is going to grow. So you start with where they are now, and then from there, the extent of how long and for how much, and to the extent of how much they're growing. And roots tend to move where there is water. So that's another key element. So my point is, I've seen it a lot where you put a drip emitter just in the trunk, and then those roots just circle the tree. And then we get those spring winds and the tree falls. But if you're putting water around the entire tree ring and the tree canopy, then the roots tend to be stronger. If you're watering deeply, then those roots tend to go even deeper. Like trees, the roots don't move to dry areas. They're always that's why they go through our pipes in our houses, sewer pipes, water pipes, because they're looking for water.
Of course, the issue is you don't want to touch an area three, 2, 3, 4, half a dozen times as expensive as a tree grows.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah. No, and I see it. So yes, the first is to, if you're looking at a mature tree, it's easier to kind of like figure out. But if you're looking at a tree that's establishing itself, one of the tools that I've seen is using like a Netafin, which is a type of drip line that has like an emitter, like a laser beam emitter, like every 12-inch, and you can do like a circle around the tree, and then as the tree expands, you can add more line, and then you start continuing sort of like following the path of where that tree is growing. Yeah.
So why would you give, if you have trees interspersed into grass, rather than keeping your sprinklers going on the grass there, why would you just put in an appropriate drip system around your tree, which will ultimately water deep? You can control that and give the tree what water it needs. I mean, you don't want to keep your sprinklers going, especially if you've got areas that are,
Yes.
little patches here and there under your trees.
No, and that's, I mean, you just touched on what I was gonna touch on about supplemental irrigation, which is that you still want to transform the way you're watering that tree. You just want to do it in a phase out approach. So if I'm doing it for, let's talk about one tree, and it's used to like spray irrigation, I wouldn't just automatically stop watering the way it's been watering for 20 years, because the tree may go in shock. You want to do a succession, and it may take like a whole season, maybe 2 seasons. You want to add drip, and it can be that drip I talked about. You can start watering deeply once a week or twice a week. You still maintain the spray for that given zone, but eventually you're training that tree to adapt to a different type of watering regimen. Yeah.
Those other areas that you're not removing the turf right away.
Yeah.
And start watering the tree properly.
Yes.
And then remove that turf once that tree is acclimated.
Or you can add mulch on top of the turf, and you don't even have to remove it. You just like suffocate the turf with mulch, but you also got to be careful. You don't want to put that mulch against the trunk of the tree. So there's a lot of like key elements, especially for trees, that we got to care for when we're doing these transformations, and tapping into some of the resources that I've listed here, and also working with the local landscaping companies that may have a certified arborist in their group to really understand the impact of this transformation, especially for trees, because they can go in shock. In Albuquerque, we lost like 40% of our tree canopy when we started really big and doing transformations and conservation reductions.
When you talk about mulch here in the desert, what's mulch in the desert?
It can be organic, non-organic. So like bark, it can be like bark, it can be like pecan shells, it can be, it all depends where you want to put it, how you put it. So if you're creating basins, then that mulch may stay there and retain more. If you're creating like beds, then it's harder to keep that organic mulch. Usually hard rocks is better. They all have different practical strategies for when you're designing your landscape.
So would an arborist, depending on the trees that we want to site in a particular area, an arborist would recommend?
That would be the best professional, but also an experienced landscaper that doesn't have the certification as an arborist, but has 20 years of experience in managing landscapes. They might know a lot more than the 5 minutes that we're dedicating. They know more than the 5 minutes I'm dedicating to the topic, but the main thing is that trees are the most important thing to take care of when you're doing this transformation. Yeah. So smart irrigation, this Netafin in this picture is the one I'm showing. It's the one that you can continue circling around your trees. Efficient nozzles, there's a lot of companies that do a lot of different types of efficient nozzles that can help you save up to 30% of watering on the areas that you're going to continue to have spray irrigation. The key thing from this slide is that typically what I don't see in contracts where your landscaping companies is doing monthly checkups of your irrigation systems. Typically, that's sort of like on call. If you got a leak, you call them. It's important to be more proactive because sometimes it can take 3 months before finding that leak, including in your contracts that it's more money, but you're actually physically, and you're paying and setting up a budget for your professional to inspect your system on a regular basis and to enhance it. Selecting the right plants, trees, look for drought-tolerant species, native species, low-maintenance ground covers, pollinator-friendly, why not? Add birds, add butterflies to your areas, work with designers that understand the types of plants that are regionally adapted to your condition, to your microclimate. There's a whole gamma of palettes of plants. Lush and Efficient Landscaping Guide provides a lot of plants, and there's a lot of resources. Some alternatives, look for beds, mulching, bioswales, permeable pathways, and hardscaping. And this California Water Efficiency Landscaping Guide provides a lot of tools. And also the Be Waterwise resource. Hire people who know and understand the types of design, installs, and maintenance that's required for this type of desert-friendly landscapes. And if you're working with your own maintenance staff, get them certified. Coachella Valley offers on a regular basis the Qualified Water Efficient Landscaping certification, which is a whole training. I think it's 24 hours that provides trainings free. I think it's free for your maintenance staff. When you're bidding for landscape professionals, require certifications. Ask for a water budget plan, how it connects to the budget that you already have in place. Prioritize local experience, people who connect to the references, ongoing training for maintenance staff on irrigation, best practices, plants. And these are some of the certifications that are in the industry. Some of them are really local to California, others are national, and some are international. So again, these resources are going to be provided to you. And I think we're not going to have time for this, Paul, so we're going to jump into the last section. And I can't touch on this enough. In order to have the best meeting ever, yeah, so it's a meeting where you engage your community members. When you see that one person that's never been to your meeting, you know you've succeeded. So in order to do that, you got to do your homework. And in order to implement your long-term goals, and especially this bill, you got to work with your neighbors, you got to voice out, you got to outreach. That's the fundamental action plan in order for you to engage and ultimately implement this bill. It's getting your community involved in that long-term vision. And if you invite folks to participate and partake and create that vision all together, ultimately you're going to be able to have less friction and be able to implement this bill with less constraints, less hesitation. So you can do this by offering surveys, informational sections, and showcasing some of the areas that you have already transformed. Address concerns by creating beautiful areas. You know, don't transform an area to something that's ugly. I'm just going to put it straight out like that. Because if you do that, guess what? Next time you talk about transforming an area, that's the first thing that comes to mind. There's a lot of experienced landscapers within our group right now that can help you design healthy, thriving, beautiful, desert-friendly landscapes. They're a lot more beautiful than a monoculture turf grass. A lot more beautiful. We're just not used to that concept. But by all means, set up something beautiful. Your first move, make something beautiful. If you're successful in doing that, you're going to have a lot less friction. Address some of the issues that come with overwatering, such as the cause of constant cracks and potholes and sidewalks and roads, mold in your buildings, maintenance costs in regards to like addressing all those issues, higher water bills, and getting in trouble with Adam's group, the water cops. Who's got issues with water cops here? Yay, sorry. Here's one, Adam. Yeah. It's your man. Key selling points, potentially lower water bills, less maintenance potentially. Though Mark said no today, and now I agree, maybe I should take that bullet out. But potentially different type of maintenance needs. More usable space. So when you're transforming this area, actually make them usable now. Make them usable. Maybe there was a patch of turf grass that had no trees. Now you got trees, you put a bench under, now you can sit under it. And ultimately leverage rebates, programs, incentives. Oh, woo, I didn't know it was like this. Nice. And thank you, Adam. So Adam touched on this. This is my last slide. You're not alone. There's a reason why we organized this. SoCalGas, Cal Web, Coachella Valley Water District is because we're here for you. We're here for you to support you, not only in knowledge and amplifying your skills, but also through rebates, incentives, providing on-site audits, connecting you with professionals such as what we did with this summit and bringing in the landscape professionals to this group. So you're not alone. And you're not alone as board members. You got your entire neighborhood, which you may find in this process that you have a lot of people who are ready to jump in to conserve water and improve their landscape in their community. And sorry it took so long. I told you I tend to talk more when I'm around friendly people. Okay, thank you. Thank you.